your News Talk America on 92.7 WGMD. The Talk of Delmarva.
Good morning. Our good friend Mark Mix is with us, the president of the National Right to Work Foundation and National Right to Work Committee. Mark, sorry about the technical issue, but fortunately it's been resolved. Mark, it's my feeling that when Americans are sizing up a presidential candidate, you know, they talk about their policies. They like their policies. They don't like their policies. Perhaps they hate President Trump because they hate President Trump. Who knows? But the things that we don't look at, especially in your line of work, is the relationship between certain candidates and the big union bosses, which can have a big effect on American life. This PRO Act, which you're going to tell us about, is one of those that seems to me that Kamala Harris is definitely pro-union, pro-big bosses in the union. And if they're successful in getting Kamala elected, the PRO Act will devastate 26 states which have right-to-work laws, correct?
Yeah, that's right, Jake. It's pretty straightforward. Kamala Harris just reassured union officials that she would sign the PRO Act if it made it to her desk. And you're absolutely right. The first thing the PRO Act does, among many other things, and I should call it the so-called PRO Act because they want to say it's the Protecting the Right to Organize bill. And the right to organize unions in this country has been in federal law since the 1930s. Nothing stops workers from joining together to amplify their voice, to try to organize and implement unionization in their workplace if they choose to do so. The problem is that the finger on the scale has tipped way over in favor of union officials. And Jake, you got that exactly right. It's not rank and file workers that we're talking about here. This is extremely new and dangerous powers for union officials to do one thing, and that is to force workers to pay union dues or fees in order to work in America. And as you mentioned, 26 states have those laws on the books. They're called right to work laws. They're real simple. They give the worker the choice to choose whether or not they want to financially support a labor union based on that union's behavior, whether it be on the shop floor or whether it be politically in state capitals across the country or in Washington, D.C. So she has reiterated that she wants to force all workers across America to pay union dues or fees in order to work. That's a very dangerous position.
Mark, this is just another federal government mandate, isn't it? Mandating that workers be forced to pay money to the union bosses. Isn't that what it is?
Well, actually, what it is, Jake, the mandate already exists in federal law. In fact, in Delaware right now, there is no state law that forces private sector workers to pay union dues or fees. There's no statutory or regulation that comes out of your state capital. That power for union officials comes out of Washington, D.C. in a Roosevelt-era New Deal policy that was basically rammed through Congress and basically rammed through the Supreme Court as constitutional in an effort to save the 9 members of the court at that time because Roosevelt threatened to pack it. But the imposition of forced unionism is a federal mandate. And so what they're doing is they're going to take away the rights of states to basically preempt themselves from that very narrow section of federal law that allows forced payment of dues or fees to keep a job. So they're going to go back and say, you know what, the federal government's in charge of everything again, and one of the things the federal government's going to do is reimpose forced unionism on those 26 right-to-work states.
Mark, you were at the RNC early this month, correct?
Yeah, I was up there for a day. I didn't spend a whole lot of time. I didn't have the right hat or the right T-shirt or whatever, but yeah, I was there for a day or so. Yep.
Well, what was your thought then of Teamsters President Sean O'Brien's speech at the RNC? It was a miracle that he was even there in the first place. But what was your thought or thoughts of Sean O'Brien's speech at the RNC?
Well, I think the one thing that was interesting, Jake, is that he was there. I mean, I guess you're right about that. His message was exactly the same message that he articulates everywhere he goes, and that's, anti-business, anti-capitalism, pro-socialism, more government control. I mean, there was no surprise in what he said. Right. The one thing that's not surprising to me, though, Jake, is that he is a politician, too. Remember, he's just got elected a year and a half, 2 years ago as the Teamster president. He's a politician. He knows that his rank and file members are supportive of the agenda that Donald Trump is articulating. And so for him, that was a campaign speech to his membership saying, hey, I get you, because I think he knows that the majority of rank and file workers, not only in his union, but we know in the United Auto Workers Union and other unions across the country.
I was just going to bring that up, Mark. You nailed it, because Kamala the Commie, that's what I call her, she wants to destroy the what's left of the U.S. automobile industry, and the UAW president doesn't really care. He knows his rank and file support Trump, and yet he's supporting Kamala Harris, right?
Yeah, that's right. They've endorsed Joe Biden. In fact, most of these unions endorsed the Biden-Harris team back in the 2023 era, before they even knew what was going to happen, whether Joe was going to run or not. Obviously, things have changed pretty quickly over the last couple of weeks, Jake. But nothing's changed with Sean Fain at the UAW. He's all in for whoever it is that has a D behind their name, no matter what their agenda is, and no matter the damage it would do to his rank and file members. Sean O'Brien's a little more savvy. I respect him for that. He showed up at the RNC because he knows his members have a different worldview than the union officials. And frankly, I'm not sure what Sean O'Brien's real worldview is, but I know he's a politician, and he wants to make sure that he's on the right side of history when his membership comes out, and the reports will be that the majority of them voted for the candidate that was on the other side, that the UAW and the other unions endorsed wholeheartedly.
Now, you mentioned politicians, and we, on the conservative side, believe that Josh Hawley, the junior senator from Missouri, I guess he's the senior senator now from Missouri. He moved up in ranks. That he's one of us. But Josh Hawley does some stuff that, let's put it this way, shakes conservative heads. Now you call him Senator Josh Boss Hawley. Why don't you tell our listeners why?
Yeah, he's Boss Hawley because he came out, when he first ran for office, he said he believed in the individual workers' ability to choose whether or not they wanted to financially support a union. He supported right to work. He was articulate in that. He signed our right to work survey saying that he believed that this was a basic freedom, a basic liberty issue for workers, that he would fight to protect their right to join unions and advocate for unions and associate with unions. But he said this, he wouldn't force anyone. Obviously, he's grown in office. He wants to be a presidential candidate in 2028. He says he would quote, never impose right to work on anyone, which is the most outrageous statement ever, Jake, because we just talked about the imposition comes from the federal government, not from anyone else. So the imposition is forced unionism, not liberty and freedom. So Josh Hawley, while he sounds real smart when he's asking questions of nominees and all that other stuff, he has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to labor policy.
Mark Mix is joining us, the president of the National Right to Work Foundation and National Right to Work Committee. Mark, 96 days until November 5th. What should potential voters think and know about the cozy relationship between politicians and the unions, and how that could hurt our future in this country significantly if we vote the wrong way?
Yeah, Jake, first of all, we need to understand that organized labor is going to use the compulsory dues fees they collect and the other revenue they collect from the federal government in many instances to basically support candidates that are going to give more power to union officials, not rank and file workers, not American workers, more. Yeah.
So they're going to collect union dues, which they're going to go right to the DNC, correct?
Yeah, they're going to make those contributions. That's exactly right, Jake. And we know they spend about $2 billion every 2 years on politics and lobbying. That's because their power is a derivative of government action. And so they've got to be beholden, or the politicians that they help elect have got to be beholden to them, because their power is a derivative of government action, not winning the hearts and minds of rank and file workers.
And for our listeners who weren't aware, Mark and his organization worked with those who worked at the Mount Air plant in Dagsboro to decertify their union, correct?
Yes, we were working with those folks in the first round. The second round, they got it done all on their own. But yeah, that was a really major battle, and one that showed kind of the corruption and the force that union officials have over workers. When workers try to get out, the union makes it extremely difficult. It's easy to get in, Jake, but it's really hard to get out. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we know that even though there's an NLRB, depends on who's in the White House, that makes it more difficult for those to get out, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. This National Labor Relations Board, which is the 5-member creation of the federal government to adjudicate federal labor policy, they now have basically ruled that workers should no longer have even a secret ballot election to determine whether or not they want to be in unions. It's really outrageous what's happened over the last 3 years. You know, the Democrats talk about the worker being left behind, but for the last, 12 or the last 16 years, the candidates they've endorsed have been in charge of the federal government here in Washington, D.C. So the fact that it's getting worse for workers, according to Sean O'Brien, they ought to look in the mirror and understand that there is a possibility of change. And there is a candidate out there that stands up for smaller government, lower taxes, less regulation, secure border, Second Amendment rights. And then there's another candidate that stands against all of that. And unfortunately, the union officials are on the side of the person that wants to grow the government, grow the coercion, grow the regulation, and wants to continue to export jobs overseas. I mean, it couldn't be a clearer distinction on our issue, labor policy, Jake, that's for sure.
Mark, thanks so much. You've always been a good friend to this program, and I'm so grateful that you came on this morning. I'm sure we'll talk again before the November 5th election. There's so much that we need to keep in mind. But again, unions and union bosses, they have a lot to say with respect to how these elections go, because they take the money that their workers are forced to donate to the union bosses, and that money goes right to the teachers' unions, Randy Weingarten. It goes directly to people like Sean O'Brien. It does have an effect on this nation, and it has an effect on your financial future. Mark Mix, president of the National Right to Work Foundation and the National Right to Work Committee. Mark, God bless. Thanks for coming on, and I will talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it. And kudos to Max for getting things back on track. Way to go, Max.
Yes, there you go. Thanks, Mark. We appreciate you coming on this morning.